Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. That's how old I am. That was a popular song back in like 78. Jeez, I'm old. This is the Alpha Male 2.0 podcast, and I am Caleb Jones, and I make a multi-six-figure location-independent income while dating multiple attractive women, and I show men like you how to do the same thing because it's really good. Minus last week when I had the cerveza sickness. Minus last week. Last few weeks have been really, really good. Financially, sexually, across the board, all good. And yes, I had the cerveza sickness last week. I felt bad for about 5, 6, 7 days, and then I felt better. I just tested negative on my PCR test about 3, 4 days ago. And as I've been saying since this thing broke out back in March of 2020, it's nothing to fear. The vast, 99+% of people who get their cerveza sickness, you have the flu for a few days and then you feel better. Oh no! Pussies. Anyway, now I feel better, which is nice. Today we're going to talk about a fun topic, dating other women in other countries. So long distance relationships and or hookups, I guess, although that's not something I do, with women who live in countries outside of your country. And it doesn't matter which country you're in. If she is a woman who you are having sex with either once or twice on a semi-regular basis and she lives outside of your country, that's what we'll discuss today. So as usual in Alpha Male 2.0, we have 3 different categories of relationships. We have FB, that is friends with benefits. That's a woman that you have sex with, but you're just friends. You're not dating. You're not spending the night. You're not going out on dates. You're not cuddling after sex. She's your buddy and you have sex. That's it. Then you have MLTR. That is a woman who you are dating and like. And so you are dating her. You can take her out on fancy dates. She can spend the night. You can spend the whole weekend with her if you want. But it's completely non-exclusive and non-monogamous, so you can have multiple MLTRs. You can date many women. Not many. There's a certain limit to these things based on your weekly schedule. But you can date, a decent number of these women. You can have multiple MLTRs. You can have multiple FBs. Then lastly, we have OLTR, and that is the Alpha Male 2.0 version of a girlfriend. So that is a woman that is your girlfriend or your wife if you live with her. But, you can have sex with other women whenever you want as long as they're just FBs. You cannot have MLTRs if you have an OLTR. So an OLTR is an emotionally exclusive, non-monogamous relationship. That is a relationship I have with my wife, Pink Firefly. I have sex with other women on a weekly basis, but they're all FBs. There are no MLTRs. I am not allowed to date other women, but I don't want to. If I wanted to date other women, I would have MLTRs, which I did for 10 plus years. It was great. So it depends on what you want, your age, where you are in life, and your objectives. Alpha Male 2.0 is a very configurable system based on, things that you want and things you don't want. And it appeals to all ages and personalities. That is one of the many beauties of the Alpha Male 2.0 lifestyle. So when you have women in other countries, these categories remain. Although you can fudge the categories a little bit. So the beauty of having women in other countries that you see is that you can actually bend some of the rules. For example, I've talked about this ad nauseum in my books and on my blogs and my YouTube channel. One of the cardinal rules for relationships for FB and MLTR is you can only see her once a week, okay? You can only see her once a week. But if you travel to, if you go to Colombia, you spend a month in Colombia, let's say you live in the UK and you spend a month in Colombia, and you got an FB in Colombia, you could see her more than once a week, it's fine. You could break that rule. MLTR, same thing. You could break the rule and see her more than once a week. The reason you could break the rule is because you don't live there. So you're not going to damage attraction or get a bunch of drama if you do this because you'll be gone in 3 weeks. So it's fine. Now, that doesn't mean you want to lie to women. That doesn't mean you want to lead women on, of course. As I've said many times, the Alpha Male 2.0 doesn't need to lie because it doesn't hide anything. We are not monogamous, so we don't have to pretend to be something we aren't. It's kind of nice. But I'm just saying that when you have women in other countries, you can kind of break the rules a little bit. Should you go full bore with breaking the rules? No. So if you have an FB in a foreign country, you don't want to take her out to dinner and then go see a movie and then spend the night with her. That's very incongruent, and you will have drama and problems unless you literally know you're never going to see her again. But again, why are you doing this? You're leading her on. Don't do that. So you can't go crazy with breaking the rules, but you can break the rules, or I should say you can bend the rules a little bit when women are long distance. Now, this goes back to whether or not you're going to regularly visit that country. So women in other countries, you really need to think of in two categories, okay? There are women in other countries where you're going to go visit that country. You might get laid a little bit, have an FB MLTR temporarily, and then leave, and you're never going to go back to that country ever again. You have no plans whatsoever to ever go back to that country. Or maybe if you do, it's 5, 10 plus years from now, and it's something you'll just come up with later. Then you have your flags, your flag country, as I talk about Sovereign CEO, where you have several countries you regularly visit because they are part of your lifestyle, they're part of your flags. So, for example, I was first introduced to this concept years ago when I was a young computer consultant. I worked with a guy who would regularly go to Vietnam. He was into Vietnam chicks. And he was an old man, he was in his 60s, single, no kids. And his vacation, every time he took a vacation, he did this all the time, several times a year, he would go to Vietnam. He would spend a week there, 2 weeks there, 3 weeks there. He was a higher up in a company, so he was management staff, so he could take a little more time off. And he would go there and just bang chicks. Now, when I say bang chicks, in his case, he mostly were sugar babies and or hookers he paid because he was old and ugly, but that's what he did. And he would have relationships with these women. He would fall in love with some of these women. He would have girlfriends. Fucking hell, he actually married a few of these women. And when I mean a few, yeah, he actually would get married and then get divorced, then marry another one. And it was mass chaos. But my point is that he had a flag that he regularly visited so he could maintain long-term relationships in this country, even though he didn't live there. I have mentioned before, I have an entire harem of women in Paraguay. Paraguay is one of my flags. I go there on a semi-regular basis. I will spend several weeks, several months there a year, probably for the rest of my life. And so I have several women down there who are in my life. And these are long-term relationships that I fully intend on carrying on long-term for many, many years. Now, I have an OLTR marriage, so these women are FBs. Make sense? If I did not have an OLTR marriage, if I was single or had MLTRs, then I could make some of these women MLTRs. I could do that. I'm not going to do that because I follow my own rules. But that's an example of a recurring country in your life. So when you date women in other countries, you need to stop and think about this first, because I've seen a lot of guys who don't do this. Before you start engaging with your dick with these other women in these other countries, you need to ask yourself, is this a country I'm going to revisit often? Or is it not a country I'm ever going to see again? Or do I not know? I guess that could be a third category. Maybe you don't know. In my opinion, strong opinion, if you don't know, you need to make that determination before you have sex with women, because you're going to have a lot less problems that way. So if you don't know, I don't know if I'm going to be here, figure it out, man. Figure it out quick, because that will then determine whether or not you're going to revisit that country or never visit that country again. That will determine the baseline of what you do with these women and the structures in which you place these women. If you're never going to go to that country ever again, you're reasonably sure. When I say never again, I could say, well, maybe someday 10 years plus down the road, you might revisit it. But other than that, you're not going to go there again. Then you can kind of do whatever you want, right? Again, I don't lie to women. I don't leave women on. I'm not going to tell a woman that I love her and we're going to build a future together and then leave her and never see her again. I don't do that. I don't lie. It's part of my personal code. So I don't do that. I recommend you don't do that either. That's not Alpha Male 2.0. That's just Caleb's opinion. So I don't lie. So I don't think you should lie to women. But beyond that, you can kind of do whatever you want. One night stands, FBs, MLTRs. You could break all the rules. It doesn't matter because you're never going to see these women again, so who cares, right? So you can kind of do whatever you want. Have a free-for-all. If these are countries you're going to visit again, if these are flag countries for you, countries you're regularly going to visit, you then need to determine the goals for why you're with these women. Are you there just to get laid with a bunch of one-night stands, and then next time you go, it's a whole new slew of one-night stands? Fine, if that's your objective. That's not something I do. I have never one-night stood a woman in my entire life. I literally have never done that. I don't see the point. If I think a woman is attractive, why would I only want to have sex with her once and then go get more women? That doesn't make any sense to me. That is just an alien concept to me. I've never understood this. So I've never one-night stood a woman in my entire life. Now, there have been women who have one-night stood me. That certainly happened. Women, contrary to popular belief, women pump and dump alpha males all the time. Women one-night stand men all the goddamn time. So it's happened to me, but I've never one-night stood a woman. Every time, and I've said this many times, and I mean this, every time I have sex with a new woman, or even when I meet a woman on a first or second date and I like her, My objective is, this is not Alpha Male 2.0, again, this is just Caleb's personal opinion and personal objective. My objective is to have sex with that woman, at least off and on, because we have breaks and listen pitties, literally for the rest of her life, unless she gets fat. And that's a literal statement. There are women I've had sex with recently who have been in my life for almost 10 years, or 10 years plus. Okay? There have been women who I first started seeing who are 18 years old and are now almost 30, or matter of fact, one is 30. So that's how long I've done this. So I do long-term relationships. And I'm not saying you need to do that. What I'm saying is you need to establish the goals you have for these women in this other country when it's a country you're going to see regularly. Are you going to have one-night stands? Are you going to have FBs? Are you going to have an MLTR or two in that country? That's a little complicated. I'll talk about it in a second. Are you looking to settle down in that country? Are you looking for perhaps an OLTR or OLTR candidate in that country? Some guys want to do that. Some guys want to marry, or when I say marry, settle down with, you don't have to legally marry her, settle down with a non-Western woman and settle down and have kids. Great. If that's your objective, great. But you need to know what your objectives are. Matter of fact, the very first podcast I ever did, before Alpha Male 2.0, when I was doing Black Dragon podcasts, the very first podcast was, you need to have a specific objective with all of your women. Don't just go out there and get laid. Well, I want to get laid. Well, I want a girlfriend. These are very fuzzy objectives. What is your objective? What do you want? Again, within the Alpha Male 2.0 constructs of FB, MLTR, OLTR. Sit down and think that through first before you start banging chicks in foreign countries. You will save yourself a lot of time, and you will also dramatically enhance the experience. The experiences I've had with women I have seen on an ongoing basis in other countries besides my primary residence here in Dubai, both as MLTRs when I was before Pink Firefly and FB since Pink Firefly, have been wonderful and rewarding. And one of the many reasons is I do everything right, and I do everything purposely with a specific objective for every country I go to and every woman in that country. Okay, makes sense? It's very important you do this because a lot of guys don't do this. They just go, I'm going to go to Philippines to get laid. I'm going to go to Colombia to get laid. I'm going to go to Argentina to get laid. No, don't just go somewhere just to get laid. Unless you've sat down and established, I only want one-night stands. What does get laid mean to you? Now I should reiterate that. To you, not to the people you talk about on the internet, not to the YouTube videos of guys you watch on the internet, not what Caleb would say would be ideal, okay? What do you want? Not your friends, your family, your dad, your mom. To you. What does getting laid mean to you? When you're going to go to Thailand or the Philippines or Paraguay, where the fuck you're going to go to get laid, quote unquote, what does that mean? Does that mean I want 2 FBs I see several times a year? Does that mean I want 1 MLTR and 2 FBs that I see several times a year? Does that mean I want a gigantic harem of FBs, 5, 6, 7 women that I go see once a year and I spend a month there and just blow my brains out with pussy? Okay, whatever that means, define it. Take some time. Best time to do that is on the plane ride over. Okay, so sometimes you're in for a long plane ride. When you sit on that long 9-hour plane ride, 5-hour plane ride, 14-hour plane ride, because I do all those things, sit down and kind of map out on your laptop or tablet or phone what it means. What is your objective for these foreign women? Is this a long-term relationship? What type of long-term relationship is it? What type of woman are you looking for? If it's long-term, what does that look like? Because I do this with all the women I have sex with all over the world. And it's not like I'm banging hundreds of women, but it's multiple women in multiple countries. I know exactly at all times for every country and every woman in every country what my objectives are for that country and what my objectives are for that individual woman. This is why I don't have problems in my woman life. This is why I don't, because I'm very, very clear. I have clarity about this stuff. Then, once you have a clear objective, then you execute on that objective. So if you want FBs, go get FBs. If you want to do sugar daddy game, you older guys with more money, I'll cover that in a little bit, you can do that. If you want MLTRs, that means you can actually start dating women in these other countries that you're going to see often. Okay, that's fine. If you want to maybe find a girlfriend or future wife in this country, great. So let's address all those things one at a time. FBs. FBs is obviously the easiest. And in many countries, if you are a Westerner, you have a little higher SMV, so FBs is a little easier. You have to be aware of, when you deal with women in other countries, cultural differences and emotional differences. For example, women in Latin America are more emotional than Western women. Now, in many cases, this is a good thing, but sometimes this can be a bad thing in terms of drama or neediness or women falling in love with you. I've certainly had that issue. So you got to be aware of these things. If you're going to go instead date in Asia, parts of Asia with Asian women, be aware that what her family thinks about her relationship life is going to be very important to her, much more important than if she was a Western girl. So be aware of that. So yes, there are lots of advantages and pros to having sex or relationships with women outside the West. Abso-fucking-lutely. But there are some negatives too you have to be aware of. So be aware of cultural differences and be aware of emotional differences, because you'll run into those, especially if you're a Western guy and you've never really been outside the West. I've seen this happen in my audience. Guys who have never been outside the West, they hear about stuff about me or other people, and they go, oh, I'm going to go to, I don't know, Philippines. I'm going to go to Thailand. I'm going to go to China. I'm going to go to Colombia. I'm going to go to Venezuela before it collapsed. I'm going to go to these countries. I'm going to have sex. And they're kind of blindsided by the differences of how these women interact. So just be aware that there's going to be some significant differences. That's okay. Just be aware of them and integrate them into your FB model if you want FBs. FBs, as always, is the easiest type of relationship to maintain and establish. So it's not a big deal. The trouble with FBs when they are remote, when they are long distance to other countries, is that retention is an issue. So if she's an FB and she knows she's an FB, then when you go back to see her again in 6 months, 12 months, a year, the odds are pretty decent either she'll ignore her texts or she'll give you a little lecture about how she has a boyfriend now and can't see you. So just be aware of that aspect. That's if you're that's a non-sugar baby FB. Now let's pivot, talk about sugar daddy game, sugar babies. The advantage with sugar daddy game, and again, sugar daddy game only applies to older men who have more money and are able to get laid without paying for it. Those are the parameters I use for paying for sex, okay? So, but if you're in that category and you want to do sugar daddy game abroad, it works extremely well. And the beauty of sugar daddy game outside of the West or outside of places like Dubai and places like that, places like Southeast Asia, Latin America, is that it's going to be a lot less expensive, even though the women are going to be super gorgeous. So it's a lot less expensive. That's the beauty. Another advantage to sugar daddy game with FBs, and let me rewind 1 second. Sugar babies should only be FBs. Never date a sugar baby. Let me say that again. Some of you guys are fucking this up. Never date a sugar baby as an MLTR and certainly not as an OLTR. Do not do this. That doesn't work. That's going to blow up in your fucking face. Do you really want to have a relationship with a woman who you actually have emotional connection with and you care about her emotionally because you really like her or you're in love with her and the only reason she's hanging out with you is because you're giving her money? No, I can't think of anything more beta or psychotic. Please do not do this. So if you're going to do sugar daddy game in your own country or a foreign country, that's FBs only. I have some sugar babies. I have some. I have some normal FBs and I have some sugar baby FBs, but my sugar babies are all FBs. I don't date these women. I'm not even allowed to because I have a wife and I don't want to. But you get my point. So going back to what I was saying, the advantage of sugar daddy game abroad is that it really helps retention. So if they know they're getting paid and it's just an FB, they're just hooking up with you and you're nice to them, yes, you can establish various sugar babies all over the world and you could see them once a year or even once every year and a half, once every 2 years, and they'll probably be available. Even if they get boyfriends, they'll still be available for you because they like money, right? Right. So that's the advantage of sugar daddy game abroad. Just make sure that they're only FBs, always, always, always. Now let's move up to MLTRs. These are women you're actually dating. Can you date a woman as an MLTR in a foreign country that's long distance? I have been very consistent about this. I've said this many times before we even talked about other countries just having long distance MLTRs where maybe it's maybe you live in Los Angeles and you have an MLTR in Chicago. Can you do this? Yes. Is it allowed under the Alpha Male 2.0 model? Yes. Is it recommended? No, it's not. I do not recommend you have real emotional based, I care about you deeply, I'm falling in love with you, or not even falling in love with you, but someone you really do like and you're dating, okay? Someone who lives on the other side of the planet. Can it work? Yes, especially if it's an MLTR and it's non-monogamous. Yes, it can work. I've seen guys do it. Do I recommend it? No, because it puts a lot of pressure and stress on the relationship and retention is still going to be a problem. She's not a sugar baby. This is someone you're dating. So she's going to eventually get pissed off that the relationship is not progressing because she only sees you 1 month out of 15 or whatever schedule you've got. So that's pretty difficult. Another challenge with long distance MLTRs, is that they will text you all the goddamn time. So if you see her once a year, let's say you see her every November for a month. Okay, I'm just giving a random example. The other 11 months out of the year, you're still going to have to maintain that relationship, which means she's going to be texting you on WhatsApp. She's going to be trying to, set up video calls with you. She'll be calling you on the phone. You have to invest a lot of time and effort the other 11 months out of the year just to get laid for a few weeks in November. That's not very good time management. That's not smart. And you might as well just have MLTRs in your own city. So can you have MLTRs in other countries? Yes. Do I recommend them? No, I don't. I think if you have an MLTR or multiple MLTRs, have them in your own city. I did MLTRs for 10 years plus. MLTRs are wonderful. At one point, I usually had 2 MLTRs and several FBs. At one point, I had 3 MLTRs. Did that for years. It was great. But they were all within my local area. Did not have any remote MLTRs. Remote FBs, yes, remote FBs are wonderful. Every guy needs remote FBs. But remote MLTRs, not a great idea. Now, could you come up with a weird scenario where maybe a remote MLTR might be okay? Yes, maybe you spend half the year in Canada and half the year in Hong Kong, for example. Okay, maybe you have a lifestyle like that. Maybe that would work. Most guys aren't going to have that kind of travel schedule, including Five Flags guys like me, but that's fine. You could make that work. I'm just letting you know I don't think it's a good idea, and I don't recommend it. OLTR, let's talk about OLTR. What if you're going to a foreign country and your plan is to find a woman to settle down with? Again, you need to plan this out. Does that mean you're going to move to her country full-time or most of the year and settle down in that country as a new flag, as your primary residence, the way I did Dubai, and then settle down with her there? Or is the intention for you to build a relationship with her, starting as an MLTR and then morphing into an OLTR, and then flying her back to where you live and then settling down with her where you currently live? What does that mean? Figure that out now. Don't figure that out way into the relationship, which I've seen some stupid men do. They fall in love with some foreign chick, and they didn't give any planning as to how to settle down with this chick, and they say, come move to me in Chicago where I live. And she says, but I live here in Brazil, and my family is here, and my mom is here, and my poppy is here. Can't move. And the guy goes, woo-hoo, and he cries. Figure that shit out. And that becomes the parameters for the women that you're bringing in. And so you can have discussions with these women, not on the first date, please. This is after you've seen them a long time. You can have discussions with what you want and how you would structure it. And you can see if she goes along with it or not. There are plenty of women who would move with you back to the West. There are plenty of women who would move not to the West, but to a high-tech, first-world, non-Western region like Dubai. I have had plenty, I shouldn't say plenty, I've had more than one woman, without going into details, offer to move to Dubai so they could see me more often. Yes, they know I'm married. They don't care. These are women in second world or emerging market countries, and so they see Dubai and they're like, oh my God, that's great. I'd love to go there. So yes, you can certainly find those women. But again, you need to follow the OLTR system. OLTR means, I've said this a billion times, OLTR means this is a woman you have dated as an MLTR for at least 6 months consistently, and you've had very little drama or problems. Then you have what I call the OLTR talk. And if she survives that talk, some women won't, then you can promote her as OLTR. That means she's your girlfriend. Then you should date her as a girlfriend for a while. And then if you want, you can move in with her. That's kind of the sequence. By the way, that is exactly and literally what I did with my OLTR wife, Pink Firefly. She started out as an FB. She's an FB for about a year. Then for about a year, we didn't see each other, but we were still friends. And then we hooked up. She was an MLTR for about 6, 7, 8 months. Started to really like each other. We had the OLTR talk. She survived it with flying colors. She became my OLTR girlfriend. She was my OLTR girlfriend for about, I want to say 3 years. And then we moved in after that. And we've been living together now as a married couple. We're coming up on our 4th year. Kind of cool. But I did it correctly. So that means you need to do all that stuff within a remote long distance context. Okay? That means you need to spend a lot of time with her before you make her your OLTR to make sure she qualifies for OLTR. Most women are not going to qualify for OLTR. Let me say that again. Most women that you meet and or date and or have sex with are not going to qualify for an OLTR. I have been with a large number of women. It is well into the triple digits. And I promise you the vast majority of these women don't get anywhere near qualifying for OLTR. A hell of a lot of them didn't even qualify for MLTR, which is fine. But the vast majority did not qualify for OLTR. That's going to be the exception to the rule. So you've got to make sure you know what you're dealing with. So you have to plan out your travel schedule accordingly. That means you spend 6 months there or 3 months there, and she flies to you and spends 3 months where you live. Figure that out. Is it complicated? Yes, it's complicated. But if you got to do it right, that's how you got to do it. Okay? By the way, I am absolutely not opposed to you settling down with a non-Western woman. I think that's a great idea. Matter of fact, I was talking to a few people the other day, and they said, what would you do if you and Pink Firefly got divorced, or if Pink Firefly died, got hit by a bus tomorrow? Would you get married again? And my answer was yes. Eventually I would settle down again. It would be many years. I would just have FBs for a long time and focus on my work and focus on my mission. But yes. And I said, but I will tell you for a fact that if that were to happen, that new woman would not be an American. She would not even be a Westerner. She would either be Latin or Asian. Maybe European, maybe Eastern European, maybe, but I promise you, she would not be an American. Nothing against American women. I think American women are great. American women are hot, they're fun, they're wonderful. I have had sex with many, 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 many American women. They're great. I'm just saying, because of my lifestyle, I don't hang around with American women. I don't hang around Americans. Outside of my work life anyway, I just don't. The women I hang around with are not Americans. Matter of fact, the only American I've had sex with this year, I think this is right. Yeah, I think this is right. Of all the women I've had sex with this year, the only American is my wife, Pink Firefly. Every other woman I've had sex with have been very not Americans. You know, people from Latin America, people from Europe, various other places. So that's just the deal there. So I think it's a great idea. If you want to settle down with a woman, I'll cover the parameters for settling down in a minute. But if you want to settle down with a woman who is a non-Westerner, I think it's a great idea. I'm not trying to dissuade you from that. I'm just saying you have to follow the correct process. MLTR for at least 6 months consistently. That doesn't mean you see her for a month, you're gone for 3 months, you see her for another month, you're gone for 2 months, you see her for another month. That's not consistently 6 months. Consistently 6 months with very low drama. She knows you're having sex with other women. She's cool with it. You give her the OLTR talk. By the way, if you want to know what the OLTR talk is, that is essentially all the negatives you're giving her if you settle down with her. So when I gave Pink Firefly the OLTR talk, I gave her all the negatives. Hey, I'm a public figure. Sometimes I get haters, and they're going to be assholes, and they might be mean to you. Hey, I'm moving out of the United States in a few years. I'm going with or without you. So if that's a problem, go marry someone else. Hey, I'm going to have sex with other women literally for the rest of my life into my 70s and 80s. I'm never going to change my mind. If you want monogamy, go marry someone else. I rattle off a whole bunch. Oh, I work all day and all night. If you need some guy to hang around you all day, that's not me. Go marry a beta. So I gave her all the negatives of being with me, and I watched her very carefully to see how she reacted, and she was okay with them. She didn't love them, but she was okay. She passed the test. And so that's the OLTR talk. But you need to do all that stuff, even if she's for it, okay? And really quick, I have to reiterate this, and I feel very strongly about this, and I'm right about this. You do not have a girlfriend, that means OLTR, monogamous or not, I don't care. You do not have a girlfriend until you're at least 30 years old. You do not move in with a woman until you're at least 35 years old. When you're in your 20s, you need to be building your empire and building your infrastructure, and guys in their 20s get horrible one-itis. No, no, no. If you're under the age of 30, FBs and MLTRs only for you. You can even have a high-end MLTR who you really like. That's fine. No OLTRs, no girlfriends until you're 30. If you want to settle down, which means you move in with a woman full-time, 35. Bare minimum, 35. And I would add to that, most of your big financial goals better be done. Because when you move in with a woman, it drives upward pressure on your month-to-month expenses, even if you're an OLTR marriage and she has separate finances like I do with Pink Firefly. Just throwing that out there. We're not even going to talk about having kids. That's even a bigger topic. But you get my point. But that's it. That's the rundown on dating women in other countries as an alpha male 2.0. It is a very wonderful, rewarding thing to do. I highly recommend it, but you got to do it right. You got to follow the rules. You can bend some of the rules, as I said, but you got to follow the rules. All right, cool. This is podcast number 99, the Alpha Male 2.0 podcast. And so the next podcast will be the 100th Alpha Male 2.0 podcast, which will be a full AMA where I answer all of your questions. So if you're listening to this podcast now and you want to submit a question for that, you can email theonlyBlackDragon@gmail.com or hit me up on Instagram, Facebook group, YouTube, whatever. Just make sure you put the @CalebAMA. Make sure you put that in the DM or email or message, and we'll add that to the list, and I will answer all of your questions on our 100th podcast. I will see you next week. Have fun. Bye.